What's up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns back with you. All three of us together.
The gang is back together.
Yes. Adam Hoge, Adam Jahns, Kevin Fishbain. Everybody's here. Jahns is back from the Southeast.
I like the Southeast.
You like the Southeast. You got you're an SEC fan. Everybody knows this. And I don't know. You went the wrong week. Why didn't you just stay down there? It's Masters week. You were like, you had to have been pretty close to Augusta. Why didn't you just stay
We
there?
were, but the spring break schedule of our son's school doesn't work that way.
School doesn't matter.
Sometimes I think that.
Yeah. Kids, if you're listening, I didn't mean that. Stay in school and only skip school for really cool events like the Masters and maybe the Bears in London.
Yes. Which
Stuff like
John's kids might do.
Same. Kevin, hello. Kevin Fishbain. You can follow him on Twitter at KFishbain. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Hoge, I had a thought this morning. Do you want me to, let's just jump right into it.
Well, that's how podcasts work. So yeah, it'd be great if you, if you let us off with a thought.
So you know how you've been posting Caleb Williams videos every morning?
Yes.
I was thinking this morning, I was like, what if somebody's phone or computer just kind of busted and they can't see video, and every morning they just think you're saying good morning?
Just being a nice guy. I don't know.
Yeah. They'd just be like, wow, every morning Hoge is just so polite, wishing me a good morning.
It wouldn't be the worst thing to do on Twitter. It would make it a better place.
Yeah.
I think you're trying, though, with those videos.
I'm trying, and everybody's so damn negative. It's like every day there's 5 people are like,
should have kept Justin.
You know what you got to do one of these days? You got to do a Tyson Bagent video with a good morning.
Ooh, I'll leave that to Carm. He's the president of the Tyson Bagent fan club. I feel like, actually, speaking of Tyson Bagent, like, people have forgotten that he's on the team.
He's a really valuable part of the team.
Well, he is the backup quarterback, yeah.
Yeah.
And backup quarterbacks usually have to play. And I think he's a pretty decent backup quarterback, too. So we could probably talk more about Tyson Bagent in June during mini camp. But for now, we're going to keep it to the draft because we're getting pretty damn close. We're about 2 weeks and 2 days away from the draft happening. By the way, I don't know if this is out there, and it's probably not that surprising, but Caleb Williams will be at the draft. He should be, but sometimes players, I don't know. Joe Thomas was on a boat fishing when he got drafted. Now he's not Caleb Williams, but he was still pretty damn good. Justin Fields wasn't at the draft, so sometimes guys don't go. But I did confirm Caleb's going to be there, and I think there's probably going to be a lot of people there covering it. So should be a lot of fun.
I feel like most first overall picks are at the draft, though, right?
Yeah. I don't know how that all works even. Like, do they get paid to go? Is there more incentive for... I mean, you got to think the NFL wants the first overall pick.
Yeah, there's like a
there.
special request there. Like Bryce Young was there. Heck, Mitch was there. But he was number 2. Yeah, I feel like most of them are there.
Aaron Rodgers was there.
Sitting, waiting, stewing. And it worked out for him.
It worked out pretty well. All right, so here's the deal for today's show. By the way, follow us on Twitter at Hoge and Jahns is the show account as well. And merch, hogeandjahns.com. Golf polos are out. Everybody, might even play 9 later today, if we're being honest. It's nice out finally. We are... Oh, and hopefully everyone, if you missed Friday's episode with Josh Lucas, check it out. A lot of positive responses. Appreciate everybody who has given feedback on that. Josh Lucas gave us his top 10 overall prospects in the draft. I feel like it was a pretty interesting exercise because it gives you a glimpse of how kind of all teams' boards can be different, drastically different in some cases. When we spent a lot of time talking about that too. So there's a lot of good draft insight that I would recommend listening to before the draft comes in case you missed it. So go check that out. Today, what we're going to do is a little bit different, but very relevant to the Bears process because Ryan Poles shared some of this with us when we were all at the owners meeting. So Jahns, why don't you explain what Ryan Poles said and then I'll explain how we're going to take that forward in this episode.
So in a small conference room in the JW Marriott in Orlando, during our 15-20 minutes with Ryan Poles, he was asked.
I feel like that was an alternate version of Goodnight Moon. Like in
the great green room, there was a general manager and a bunch of journalists and one camera.
Our friend Patrick Finley was there. There was 2 cameras for a little bit. 2 cameras.
And one reporter from The Athletic who awkwardly walked in late.
Who?
And a pair of mittens.
I did not walk in late.
No, it wasn't you.
Kevin? No, Kevin was there.
I was there.
Who was the other Athletic reporter in the room?
Oh, Kalen Kaler.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to out her, but you did.
Totally just did.
Yeah.
Anyway, the question was, what excites you about the different avenues you have in the draft? And here was his answer. I like the numbers. I talked about it when I first got here, but we have different tiers on our draft board. I like the numbers in terms of the talented players that we can get to at 9. We're going to do some cool things when we get back, kind of break into teams. One team is going to talk about the tackle position is the best to go after. The wide receiver is the best. The defensive end is the best. And use factual information to kind of spit that out. And we'll have a debate in terms of what's the most impactful for our team, short term and long term. I'm looking forward to that. Now, we know at Hallis Hall they've had a bunch of different visits. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. was the headliner this week. Last week, it was Caleb Williams. But I imagine at some point this exercise has taken place over a day or 2 days, right? Where they argue about which position is best to go after. Those are 3 premium positions: offensive tackle, wide receiver, and defensive end.
So we're going to do some cool things on the show and do the same thing. So we've each taken one of these positions and we're going to make our arguments. Before we do that, though, I'm intrigued by him mentioning those 3 positions. Like, did anyone else? Are they just not discussing the other positions? Or was he just highlighting 3 of the premium positions? And I mean, pretty revealing too. That's like, okay, these are the 3 positions we're zeroed in on. And then I always, because it's draft season, get paranoid, and I'm like, is that just smoke?
Yeah, I felt that too. But I feel
Brock
like
Bowers to the Bears at number 9.
Yeah,
confirmed right here on the show.
I feel like it's part of his philosophy. Like, he puts such an emphasis on premium position investment that if you look at, I don't know, anyone's rankings, like Matt Bowen came out with this today. Like, that number 9 pick is in great range for the best tackles, maybe the first defensive end, and one of those top 3 receivers, right? Like, this is, I don't think he's hiding from the fact of that those are the best players available at number 9, and they fit the premium position philosophy that he wants to take.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, we've generally seen that Ryan Poles is a little more candid than a lot of general managers in those conversations with us. So I go back to the fact that both Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus were not afraid to just say, yes, they met with Caleb Williams. Yes, these are the things that stood out about Caleb Williams. Like, because there's a lot of people in this league that would say, I'm not going to talk about any prospects that we talked to. We're talking to a lot of guys. I feel like he's just like, look, you guys all know the top positions. We all know the top positions. I'm not losing any competitive advantages if I let you know the 3 we're honing it on.
Yeah, and that's always been refreshing about Ryan, is that, obvious things can be obvious, and you don't need to pretend that they're not. And that's been the case with Ryan Poles for the most part, I think, since he's gotten here, and that's been refreshing, and also proof that, hey, you can actually build a team that way and have success doing so without being completely secretive all the time. All right, so let's start this process. Offensive tackle is going to go to Kevin Fishbain. He's going to start us out. Jahns is going to handle the wide receivers, and I am going to talk defensive ends, kind of / defensive line, addressing the pass rush issue on defense once I take my turn. But Kevin, let's start with you and the argument to take an offensive tackle with the number 9 overall pick.
This brings me back to my days in high school. I was one of the popular kids because I did Model UN. So brings me back to those days of, so picture me holding a microphone and pacing back and forth across the stage. We were two-time Model Young international champions, by the way.
What country did you represent?
1 year I was Switzerland, which everyone made fun of
it's
me on the
easy.
committee. Yeah. And 1 year I was Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are two very different countries.
Very different countries. Anyway, gentlemen, between the three of us, we've watched over 100 years of Chicago Bears football. Adam Jahns has watched significantly more because he's way older than Hoge and myself. It also should be stated for the record, I am the youngest of the three, and because of the way age and time works, despite the eclipse yesterday, I will remain and always be the youngest one in this podcast. I digress. We have seen this franchise, as much as we talk about quarterback, how much this team has not had great offensive linemen year after year, decade after decade. Now is an opportunity for Ryan Poles to stack the Darnell Wright pick last year with a blue chip left tackle to give the Bears bookends at that tackle position that they've really never had. Let me take you through the three highest scoring Bears teams this millennium. 2018, 2 Bears offensive linemen went to the Pro Bowl. 2013, a Bears offensive lineman went to the Pro Bowl. 2006, 2 Bears offensive linemen went to the Pro Bowl. If you want to score a lot of points, you need some good offensive linemen. And here's some fun facts for you. Bo Wolf, our former colleague, and Hoge, your current colleague, heading to the 2023 draft, did a little bit of a study. He wanted to see, where do you find the best players? 63% of Pro Bowl tackles were drafted in round 1. That was the second highest behind quarterback. The median pick of Pro Bowl offensive tackles was 15. Also, second highest behind quarterback. Wide receiver, 42.9% of Pro Bowl receivers drafted in the first round. If you want to get a great offensive lineman, percentages tell you you should take that offensive lineman in the first round. And I just saw his tweet right as we were going on the air. That of the 10 highest paid wide receivers in the National Football League, only one was taken in the first round. Calvin Ridley. He was a 26th pick of the draft. So if you want to get that great offensive lineman, put him right on the other side of Darnell Wright and be set for years to come and protect Caleb Williams. Use that number 9 pick on an offensive tackle.
Which one?
Yeah. That wasn't part of the homework assignment.
I mean, it kind of was. Well, it is because, okay, all valid points, but is there a Pro Bowl offensive tackle available in this draft at number 9?
Yes.
I guess the conversation, or if I'm like the rebuttal, what if Joe Alt is gone? Like if I'm looking at the Bears board and they have like some blue colored players, those are like the best players according to the Bears draft grades. I imagine Notre Dame left tackle Joe Alt has a blue color. If he's there at 9, turn the pick in, right?
Yep.
But what if he's not?
If he's not, you trade up and go get him.
Wow.
Or there are other offensive tackles in that range, and you can trade back and get one at 11 or 12. J.C. Latham, Alabama. Olu Fashanu, Penn State. Is it Talise Fuaga, Oregon State? Again, maybe they're not on the Joe Alt level, but I think when you're talking about the opportunity that any one of those guys could be a starter, a stalwart for a decade, you go ahead and grab them with that second first round pick.
But what about Braxton Jones?
Well, you got 2 great options with Braxton Jones. Either one, you've got 3 options. Okay. 1, you've got a really good backup swing tackle who can step in whenever you need him to. 2, you've got an incredibly valuable trade chip. Who wants our left tackle who started a lot of games, who's on a 5th round rookie contract? Who wants him? We'll give him to you for a mid-round or 5th round pick. Okay. 3, you can experiment. You can try moving him, practice him inside, get him some positional flexibility because you don't know who your guards are going to be in 2025. And maybe Braxton Jones shows you something there and has the versatility to be able to give you that option. So, look, I think that we are going to learn a lot about what the Bears – we're going to learn everything about what the Bears think of Braxton Jones on April 25th. Because if they take an offensive tackle, It means they obviously believe one of those guys is an upgrade to Jones. And I do think that it's a good problem to have those options with somebody who's as skilled as he has with his experience and his contract situation. It's a good, because either you don't take a tackle and you're set with Braxton Jones, or you do and you can do a lot of different things with him.
Here's my view on Braxton Jones right now. He is, I think, and Josh called him on Friday's episode, a functional left tackle, which I think he is. I think maybe on a Super Bowl team, he's more like ideally your swing tackle. And to your point, I'd love to see if he can play inside at guard. And I don't really know that yet. So maybe we find that out. If Aaron Rodgers is my quarterback right now, or what's another veteran out there right now? Why am I blanking on all the veteran quarterbacks? If Matthew Stafford's my quarterback right now, something like that, I'm probably okay with Braxton Jones as my left tackle. But if I'm drafting a rookie quarterback and know that I absolutely cannot screw this up this time, and we're trying to get Caleb Williams all the help in the world I can, I'm probably looking for an upgrade, or at least competition, at least good competition, to make sure we're maximizing that blindside position on the offensive line. And I have to, now that's all my opinion there. I feel like that's probably how the Bears are looking at this right now too.
And Jahns, you talked about Ryan Poles and premium positions, and we know they were interested in Mike McGlinchey last March. Didn't work out. Then they draft Darnell Wright, and that worked out. I think the Bears are a lot better off with that trade-off. Other than that, we haven't seen that premium investment in tackle. That was a big one. Talking about the number 10 pick of the draft, but they inherited Tevin Jenkins. They gave Nate Davis a nice contract, but they've spent a little bit at center this offseason. Obviously traded a pick for Ryan Bates. But otherwise, like, what have they done for a team who's the two people running the team are former offensive linemen? Like, I'm like waiting for that big move. I mean, Darnell Wright was one. Like, where's that other big move to fortify that offensive line? Who's it going to be?
Let's say they take Fuaga, who doesn't meet the arm length threshold that some teams want, right? He's under 34 inches. Can he play guard, or do you take Fuaga, move him to right tackle? Can Darnell Wright play left tackle? There's a little bit of experience there, although he was pretty darn good at right tackle for you as a rookie. Like, what if he's a blue chip player on the Bears grades? We know that the Bears have done a lot of work on him. They sent Chris Morgan out to work him out in Oregon State, or he was part of the pro day workout there. Like, could he be an option at 9? But that would maybe result in some reshuffling.
Yeah, look, we've seen this group has no problem shuffling guys up front. So I mean, the idea of taking the best offensive lineman available, and you feel good about this group for the next several years, and as Hoge talked about, you're protecting your franchise. You're building up that group in front of him. Because look, I have a lot of questions about wide receiver in terms of who's that third option. What are you thinking about for 2025 and beyond if Keenan Allen's not here? But like, you can find really, really good wide receivers on day 2.
So this is where I will, to kind of wrap up the offensive tackle discussion, reference our Bears 100 on CHGO, because I have 2 offensive tackles. They're the 2 we've discussed here, basically, Joe Alt and Talise Fuaga, that I think are worthy of being taken at number 9. They're 5th and 6th on our board right now on the Bears 100 on CHGO. In a vacuum, I actually like Fuaga better. But given the Bears situation, and what you just brought up, Jahns, about what to do with Darnell Wright, I think Fuaga is a right tackle. I don't necessarily think he's a left tackle. With Darnell Wright last year, if we try to go back in time, the thinking was you have a plug-and-play right tackle, and he has the tools to play left tackle. But his tape at Tennessee showed that he did not really take off until he went to the right side. And then that's where he, became a first-round draft pick. So do I think Darnell can play left tackle? I do, but it's a projection. And to me, it's riskier, even though I think I have Fuaga ahead of Joe Alt, just 1v1 slightly better player. I've now put Joe Alt ahead of Fuaga because I just think for what the Bears need, it's just easier to take Joe Alt, put him there at left tackle, and not mess with both positions at the same time.
A true left tackle.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean the Bears, who we know love Darnell Wright, they may say, hey, we think Darnell Wright can play left tackle. If Fuaga's going to be a great right tackle, like you said, Joe Alt could be off the board. That's very, very possible. Joe Alt's already gone. So how you handle that at 9 will be very, very interesting. But so a couple names there at number 9.
You guys should see the speeches I have written for wide receiver and edge rusher too. You
did all 3?
Well, I just kind of in my head thought of other good speeches if I needed to. If your speech not coming up, Jahns, for wide receivers, I might just jump in and just help
mine
you.
Stinks, it's not you're prepared there. Mine might not be as good.
He's prepared.
Listen, I did Model UN. Like this is not it's not a slight against you guys. I have practice in this. Like you should have seen me on the floor there, the assembly floor.
This is why you went to Northwestern.
Every podcast needs a nerd, and I'm happy to step in for this group.
I think we all qualify in our own ways.
That's true.
Jahns.
Come on now. All right.
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Let's go to the jock. Johnsy. Wide receivers.
I'm going to start with Keenan Allen. Now, it's true that his last really major significant injuries were 2015, 2016, but he is 31. And let me just go through some of these injuries that he's had throughout his career. I'm just going to name a bunch. AC joint sprain, heel bruise, strained hamstring, another strained hamstring, ankle strain, hip sprain, groin pull, AC joint sprain, PCL sprain, ligament damage, ACL tear, that's in 2016, lacerated kidney, that's in 2015, broken clavicle, sprained ankle. So there's a lot of injuries in Keenan Allen's history. Now, Ryan Poles has described him as the absolute perfect fit for this offense, especially with a young quarterback coming in. Can get open. He's friendly. I know he's not the same player at 31, soon to be 32, but he is still darn good. But he is 31 and in the last year of his contract. You are looking at 3 blue chip receivers in the top 10. And I understand that you could get receivers at any point in the draft. I understand that. But when you're looking at these top 3 receivers, like if Marvin Harrison Jr. is there at number 9 for whatever reason, it's an easy pick. There's your pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. Just visited Hallis Hall this week. And I think the same might apply to Rome Odunze. Now, the last year that there was 3 wide receivers taken in the top 10, it wasn't too long ago. It was 2021 when you had Jamar Chase at number 5 to Cincinnati, hit. Jalen Waddle, number 6 to Miami, hit. Devontae Smith at number 10 to Philadelphia, 1 pick ahead of Justin Fields. It's number 10, Devontae Smith to Philadelphia, hit. So recent history suggests that if these 3 receivers are blue chip receivers, and I think our grades will reflect that as the Chicago Bears, then it's an easy decision. That receiver should be in serious consideration at number 9, given the injury history to Keenan Allen, regardless of what type of perfect fit he might be for this offense. And I think Keenan Allen can still provide this young receiver with the perfect mentor. Same thing applies to DJ Moore. And I just like to think that this is a team that receivers don't go to die, but instead flourish with a young quarterback.
So I don't know if George McCaskey's in this meeting or not, but if he is, I'd like to raise my hand as George and ask Ryan Poles a question. Ryan, that list of injuries, why did you not read those off to me when you asked for $23 million of cash on 2 hours notice before trading for him?
See, this is where I didn't like having to defend this pick. I got to be honest. As much as, like if I'm
Didn't you
looking,
assign these?
I was assigned these, and later as I thought through it, like if I'm assigned this in house, so let's say I'm like let's say Ian Cunningham is given wide receivers. Like I just would imagine that Ian Cunningham, being a former offensive lineman, would be like, no, like this is a deep year for receivers. History has shown, even though I'm supposed to make this argument, that you can get receivers, like almost good receivers at almost any point in the draft, like especially like the second and third round. Now I know the Bears haven't hit on those third rounders. I guess you got to give, Tyler Scott a little bit more time, but it seems to me like just covering this era of Chicago Bears, like the Poles era, like they like to make investments up front. Like they want to build out the trenches. And now I'm like completely not making the argument. I'm not banging the table for a receiver, but I would feel like even like Sam Jeff King, Sam Trey Koziel, 2 former tight ends, right? Like I think they believe in building through the trenches as much as you need receivers. I don't know. I think
Hey,
it's hard. Go ahead.
I was going to just to back you on this, going against the position you have. I'm going to read off these top 10 highest paid receivers, and let's count the Super Bowls. Okay, Tyreek Hill, yes,
Yes.
but guess what? The quarterback has already won 2 without him.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae Adams, 0. Cooper Kupp, 1. AJ Brown, 0. DK Metcalf, 0. Deebo Samuel, 0. Michael Pittman Jr. has even made the playoffs. Yes, he made the playoffs. Calvin Ridley, 0. Terry McLaurin, 0. Stephon Diggs, 0. And then Jahns, the ones you mentioned from that draft: Jamar Chase, 0. Jalen Waddle, 0. Devontae Smith, 0. Justin Jefferson, 0.
Yeah. And here's, of all those receivers you just listed, which one's the first round pick? There's only one. Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, right.
And he's not with his original team, obvious for different.
Well, there's a few first round picks in there.
Well, eventually,
no,
I
yeah.
tagged on at the end.
The
recent
the top
guys.
10, there's only
The
one
top
first
10
round
highest
pick in there.
paid.
Yes.
Right.
Now that's going to change because Jamar Chase, for example, is up for contract coming soon. So I mean, obviously that top 10 is going to pick. Like here's another reason. So like the Chicago Bears, just in terms of salary cap allocation, according to our friends at Spot Track, like they're number 6 in 2024 cap dollars for wide receivers. Number 6. Now, I'll just read the teams in front of them. The Seahawks, 49ers, Dallas Cowboys, Miami Dolphins, Jacksonville Jaguars. Like 49ers, like I get it. If you want to emulate that situation again, but I think by adding Keenan Allen, regardless of all the injuries I just listed off, it gives you so much flexibility that if you want to move off that pick, say someone wants to move up to 9 for Roma Dunze, which I think would infuriate Bears fans a bit. Like if you, moved off that pick and, drafted the defensive end after that. But I don't know. It just seems like a tough sell at Hallis Hall, and especially after making that move to get Keenan Allen. I want to say receiver's an option, but if I have to tier them, I'm definitely putting it behind even offensive tackle at this point, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, this is like supply and demand. And there's a lot of these. I mean, I really
good receivers.
Yeah, I like Roma Dunze. I like a lot of these players. So same thing I did with the offensive tackles. Technically, like I think Marvin Harrison Jr. and Roma Dunze are the only 2 slam dunks for me at number 9 if they're still available. I like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. as well. I think both come with a couple other questions though that don't make it a full slam dunk. So, but when you look at the receivers later, it's just a way deeper position than these other positions we're talking about. And that has to be part of this discussion. Now, Bears don't have draft capital in the second round. And I do think that there's a difference between second round wide receivers and third round wide receivers. I think that was reflected if you go back and listen to all those names that Kevin listed off. I want to say only Tyreek Hill was after the second round in there, but I'm trying to reflect back on
Hill and Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs were 5th round picks.
Yes.
Kind of unicorns. And Cooper Kupp, Terry McLaurin were 3rd rounders.
Okay. So there's kind of a drop off there. So that's another reason why you would argue that the Bears should trade back, pick up another pick if they can in there, if they're going to address wide receivers, because my counter to your counter is what happens, all those injuries you listed off, what happens if Keenan Allen gets hurt?
Yeah.
There's all of a sudden that wide receiver depth chart looks a lot different to me. And that is a possibility that you have to prepare for. You'd have to say there's a greater chance right now that Keenan Allen doesn't play in all 17 games than there is that he does.
Yeah. He last played in a full season in 2019. Now, his last significant injuries where he missed like substantial time, that was 2015, 2016, but he did miss 7 games in 2022.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question, and if this matters. You essentially have 2 number 1 wide receivers on your team right now. And I know Keenan Allen played with Mike Williams, but like, how would that work with a Rome Odunze, a Marvin Harrison Jr., a Malik Neighbors? Like, I think DJ Moore is as anti-diva, all of those stereotypes about that position that I've probably ever come across for how good he is. Like, these guys want the ball. Like, you find a way to make it work, and it's a great problem to have if you have 3 great receivers. But isn't there like is it a concern? Is it a worry that you already have to figure out how to distribute the ball to 2 alphas in terms of, these are big time Pro Bowl caliber receivers, and then you got a 3rd in there?
Yeah, see, what I would say to that, though, and this is maybe another reason why you don't draft a receiver at number 9, receivers usually take a year to get fully comfortable before they really take off. Now, there are some exceptions. Jamar Chase was an exception. Justin Jefferson was an exception. But on one hand, it creates a great situation for a rookie wide receiver to go into because they understand where they are in the pecking order, and they can learn a lot from those 2 guys. They can learn a lot from DJ Moore and Keenan Allen in that room and really soak it all in. And if Keenan Allen's not here a year from now that guy steps up with the targets, and it's a great learning situation to be in. On the other hand, everything I just said would also apply to somebody you draft in the 2nd or 3rd round. And maybe there's a little less pressure to get that guy the ball because he's not a 1st round pick. So I do think the Bears will come away with a wide receiver in this draft at some point. I think they need to, given what the depth chart looks like if Keenan Allen goes down. But I think for all the reasons we've discussed here, I don't know if it's the top need among these 3. So I'll transition here to more of the defensive and defensive line argument. And a lot of it has to do with that supply and demand, premium position, and also looking at the Bears roster and understanding what they don't have. Okay. So with these 3 positions, we know that if they stay healthy, the wide receiver group's pretty decent right now. You have 2 number 1s. On the offensive line, I think there's still question marks, but the Bears did use 1st round draft capital on a right tackle last year. The spot that hasn't really been addressed with that much draft capital, Bears did draft 2 D tackles last year, but that was 2nd and 3rd round. Now, 2 years in Matt Eberflus's defense, which requires a stud 3 technique. And as we saw last year, when they had no pass rushing at all on the outside, Montez Sweat helped that, but there's still a glaring hole on the other side. So in terms of need, especially when you consider that Justin Jones left and has not been replaced. Now, Justin Jones is not a Pro Bowler, but Justin Jones is a pretty damn good rotational player. And he got paid pretty nicely by the Arizona Cardinals. And that has not been addressed to this point. So I would rank defensive line need actually first among these three positions, even with the desire to insulate Caleb Williams in this best situation. But all the moves the Bears have already made have done that. And what a quarterback also needs to be in a great situation is a dominant defense. We saw that with Mitch Trubisky. The good year Mitch Trubisky had was a result of a dominant defense that was the best in the league. So can the Bears get all the way up there? Well, they're not going to do that if they don't have more pass rush help. And again, supply and demand here. I think of these positions, especially if we're going to look inside at defensive tackle, that falls off a cliff, in my opinion, after the early spots of this draft. And I think with the edge rushers, you very quickly go from plug and play to developmental kind of hope and develop situation with some of these guys. So who's available? Well, to me, kind of like the other positions, quite frankly, 2 wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles. I have 2 defensive linemen that I'd be willing to take at number 9. But I think both of these guys will be available. So we'll start with defensive end, and that's Jared Verse from Florida State, who I think is a prototypical hand on the ground 4-3 defensive end that fits the scheme, that especially because he would not be asked to be the number 1 edge rusher on this roster because Montez Sweat would do that. He'd be in a great position to come in, be that number 2 guy, and help give the Bears some pass rush help. But the player I have ranked even higher than him is actually on the interior. And also, in my opinion, the biggest need that they have on that defense right now, which is a get off the ball, shoot the gap 3 technique that creates consistent pressure. As much as the Bears like Javon Dexter, that's not really his game. And Byron Murphy, to me, from Texas, is that guy. So my argument here is based on what the biggest need is, how the supply really drops off a cliff after number 9. And, oh, by the way, I think you could probably grab one of these 2 players a couple picks later if the Bears can also work a trade back, add draft capital, draft one of these 2 defensive players, and address an area that they really have not addressed so far this offseason.
So if I'm in that room and I have to offer the retort on that, Byron Murphy is barely 6 feet and his arms are short. Is he fast enough and disruptive enough, strong enough to overcome those measurables, which we know some scouts, some directors obsess with? Is he good enough to overcome those?
I think he is. I think, and I would look at Javon Dexter as the reason why you can't just always be obsessed with size and length, because at some point you need to get off the ball and have quickness and explosiveness and get through those gaps. And that's why. And even though the arm length may not be ideal, when you really watch Byron Murphy, like, he's got plenty of power. He's got plenty of power in his game. He's got the quickness, and it's not fair to always bring up Aaron Donald's name in the situation, but he's like that in that he uses his lack of height to his advantage to gain leverage on much bigger offensive linemen. So again, I think it's obviously a fair question. And if we've seen anything from this Bears regime, that's where I would hesitate that they actually will draft Byron Murphy, because we know that they prefer
basketball players,
size and length in some of these picks, but I think it's also led to some mistakes in some cases.
But you know who has that size and length? Jared Verse.
Yes. 100%.
Well, I also think that, what Justin Jones is undersized, led the team in tackles for loss the last 2 years, and was so good last year that they never really. I mean, Jervon Dexter's playing time inched up a little bit as the year went on, but he was never taking Justin Jones's job. Andrew Billings, I mean, it's a different position, but what's his nickname? Juggernaut?
Juggernaut.
Yeah. So I think too, like, and this can't be the reason you make the draft pick because it obviously has to go to your board, but there's got to be a little bonus to be able to say we took the best defensive player in this entire draft. Like that's a cool thing to be able to
Well,
take away from this when you also, by the way, took the best overall prospect in the entire draft.
right. That means you come out of the top 9 with the best offensive player and the best defensive player.
Yeah.
How many teams can say that?
Now, that would seem to be, well, who was at House Hall on the same day as Caleb Williams? Dallas Turner? Like, why is he different for you, Adam, as opposed to Jared Verse?
So I like Dallas Turner, but I don't think he's, and I always hate saying this because I'm also a guy who says, okay, just draft best players and figure out how to use them. But I think it is a little different when you have a more rigid defensive scheme like Matt Eberflus does. And that's been one of the reasons why I push back at this scheme a little bit. But it is what the Bears have. It is the Bears' reality. And Dallas Turner, while I do think that you can obviously find a way to make it work with him because he's a very good football player, he's just not a prototypical hand on the ground 4-3 end. And he's got good enough length. He's obviously a good enough athlete. I think he can be a fit in the defense. I think they can find a way to use him. He's probably got more bend around the edge than Jared Verse does, but Jared Verse has way more power. And the other thing I like about Jared Verse more is the motor just runs so much hotter with Jared Verse. Like Jared Verse is a lot like Montez Sweat in that they just don't take a play off. They play the run and the pass equally. And a lot of what I think made Dallas Turner good at Alabama was his versatility and their ability to line up in any gap, stand up, play linebacker, do all this stuff. But we know that that's not really what the Bears do with their personnel. And so I just think it's way more of a projection that it can work rather than, I feel like if you draft Jared Verse, he might not be an all pro. Certainly not right away, but I think he's a plug and play number 2 defensive end and will start right away for you and give you more than Yannick Ngakoue did last year as a rookie.
See, I do think Eberflus's scheme, like, I guess I would disagree to the point. Maybe Flus wants a bit more versatility because I think he showed that. Let's not forget, speaking of Justin Jones, that famous play against the Browns, who was in coverage? Justin freaking Jones. So he's willing to do some different things.
Yeah.
Like, I like the length of Dallas Turner. I like the production. Lance Zierlein, who I love from NFL.com, has compared him to Brian Burns. And we know Brian Burns was on Ryan Poles' short list of players for that trade that eventually resulted in DJ Moore. I do agree with you that there's more projection, but that's the draft, right? Like half of this is projection, seeing what that player could be in the next level.
Is it the worst thing in the world for DeMarcus Walker to be the starting defensive end next year? Like,
I think there's worse things in the world, but
yes, sorry. That was like, because I mean, Walker's production did go up in the last 6-7 games of the season. He was signed to a pretty nice contract to kind of be the guy. Again, like, just like we talked about with Braxton Jones, just like we talk about with Justin Fields, like, if there's an opportunity for an upgrade, you take it. But if the Bears decide to, for example, Hoge, if they decide to go with Byron Murphy or decide to go, use a higher pick on a 3 tech as opposed to defensive end, and the guy they take at defensive end is just not ready to start, like, I don't think it's a terrible situation for Walker to be your week 1 starter. I mean,
to your point, that is why I prioritize the 3 technique higher.
Yeah.
Because I think
you have a guy there.
You
don't
have
have that. Yeah.
Right.
You don't have that at 3 tech.
You might maybe with
You don't
Javon
know.
Dexter, but I think that that's a huge leap of faith right now. I mean, and I still don't think even at Dexter's best, and I still do like Dexter. I still do think he can be an impactful player. I just don't think he's going to consistently be that penetrating 3 technique that when you talk to guys who played in this scheme, who tell you stories about Tommy Harris and like Corey Wooten raves about this stuff all the time and how important it really is to get somebody who can shoot the gap and consistently penetrate, win off the ball with speed. And that has taken a huge leap of faith for a guy that you haven't seen in your building since the season ended, that Javon Dexter is going to take that jump this year. And to your point with Walker, he's there. And also you signed Yannick Ngakoue in August last year. Like you have Montez Sweat on your roster. You can find another guy to get you 4 to 5 sacks as the number 2 defensive end off the street after the draft. I don't think you can find that consistent 3 technique that you know. Now, Justin Simmons is out there. He's probably going to sign somewhere after the draft, but that's like as risky as Keenan Allen playing all 17 games. If you want to go super old, like Calais Campbell is still out there. He could probably help you somewhere on the defensive line too. He's still, Calais Campbell, but I just think that the need there on the interior defensive tackle position is honestly more important than the number 2. Because let's not forget, the number 2 defensive end, not only do they add Montez Sweat, they paid him a shit ton of money too.
I think, bringing this full circle as a wrap up, the strongest arguments can be made for defensive end, defensive tackle than offensive tackle / offensive line or wide receiver. Like the strongest arguments can be made for the defensive line. This league is about the passer and affecting the passer. Here's more facts for everybody listening. The Bears were dead last in the league in sack percentage last season. Even with Montez Sweat, even as good as they were taking the ball away, dead last in the league in sack percentage. You know who's number 1? Kansas City Chiefs.
I've heard of them.
They won the Super Bowl.
Decent team.
Yes. And let me just give you some other examples. Miami Dolphins, number 2, playoff team. Buffalo Bills, number 3, playoff team. Baltimore Ravens, number 4, playoff team. Cleveland Browns, with all their quarterback issues, sorry, Joe Flacco, number 5, playoff team. So,
and they haven't addressed it at all this offseason.
That's what I mean. Like
they've lost a guy.
The signs seem to be there. So whether it's Turner, Verse, or Murphy, I think that all 3 of them would walk in day 1 and improve your pass rush. They would be starters. They would get after the opposing quarterback, and that sack percentage, even if they're not the ones sacking the quarterback, will go up for the Chicago Bears.
And I just wonder too, if they take that defensive lineman in the first round, how much of that is also the Flus effect, where your head coach is a defensive guy, is your defensive play caller, and it's time for him to be like, you know what, like I'm coaching this team, I need this guy. It was almost like, I remember when they took Leonard Floyd, and we were all kind of like, that was a Vic Fangio pick. Like that was Vic going ahead and getting his guy that he needed for his defense, as they were kind of trying to rebuild that thing. And I wonder if that's where Flus just says, all right, enough with we've done enough offense stuff. Keenan Allen, Caleb Williams, time for me to go get my guy.
Right. But again, like perfecting the defense and getting kind of that missing piece still does help your quarterback too.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're ignoring the quarterback at the same time. So look, in conclusion, I win.
It's the easiest argument to make. Like if I'm assigned defensive end, like, oh, that's the easy homework, like.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Because I honestly didn't do that much homework. I just looked at my draft board and no, it's. But I don't know. I'm still not convinced that's what they're doing.
Quick question for the next draft debate. Who gets May, McCarthy, Daniels in a what if the Bears trade back from 1? Are you assigning those, Jahns?
That means this podcast is over, everybody.
Please don't do that ever again. You know what? You can do we're still trying to figure out what we're doing Friday. So you, Kevin, can do a solo pod on that scenario coming Friday on Hoge and Jahns.
I'm busy.
All right. Well, this was a fun exercise. And hopefully I don't know where I stand on all this. I do think that they can make the best thing is that they can probably go best player available between these 3 positions. Kind of that hybrid need / BPA they always talk about.
And I do think that there will be a defensive player with a blue grade sitting there at number 9.
Yeah.
By the way, do listeners both here and on CHGO know that this is probably the most prepared Adam Hoge will ever be for a draft because he doesn't have to watch the Chicago White Sox?
It kind of applied last year, though, too.
Fair.
What I didn't think about, though, until you just said that, is that affecting or making it easier on why I don't watch the White Sox? Because I know I have to do this much homework on this Bears 100 thing. I have watched the last 3 Brewers games, though. It started off as a bit, but it might actually be a thing. I'm trying to figure that out right now.
Cubs cost me an extra half hour of sleep last night because I decided to stay up to watch when I saw they were only up 8-7.
No, don't care.
By the way, shout out to Northwestern Wildcats, the only team in the NCAA tournament to outscore UConn in a half.
Wow.
Hang the banner.
Yeah, you did behind you.
Right here. Whoops.
Yeah. Congrats to Northwestern on that.
Wasn't there like a 30-0 run after that? Was that a different game for UConn?
That was the Illinois.
That was Illinois game. Yeah.
Yeah.
They went a similar run they went a similar run in the first half against Northwestern. But that second half, the Cats almost covered in the end.
So UConn beat up on the Big Ten is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Confirmed.
Poor Purdue. I don't know if I'd rather, like, Wisconsin losing the national championship was about as bad as it gets for my career fandom losses. But they were winning with 8 minutes left in that game. Wisconsin was. I almost feel like it'd be better if I'm Purdue and I just no, I'd never really had a chance in that game. How was it for Northwestern?
Yeah, I mean, I think a loss like that, where it's okay, they're just way better. There's nothing.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? That's an easier loss to take. You tip your cap.
Yeah, I'm still not over what happened to us against Duke. All right. Well, appreciate everybody listening to this up until the college basketball segment, and we'll continue to bring you the goods. We're trying. I think we're gonna have a good guest for you Friday, but we're still trying to confirm it. So stay tuned for that. You can follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Jahns, and at K Fishbain. Of course, the show account is at Hoge and Jahns. Appreciate everybody listening, watching, however you consume the show. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, you can, and please do subscribe. Even if you don't really consume it that way, it helps us grow the channel. So please go over there, find us on YouTube, Hoge and Jahns, and then hit the subscribe button, hit that like button as well if you're already watching here on YouTube, and vice versa too. If you don't really listen to podcast way, if you wouldn't mind going on Spotify, Apple, however you listen to podcasts, and subscribing there and rating and reviewing the show, we do appreciate the help there as well to help us grow. And we will be back on Friday with another episode, going 2 a week through the draft, getting you all prepared here for what should be an epic first round for the Chicago Bears with 2 picks. Should be a lot of fun. So we'll talk to you on Friday.
See ya.